Hello everyone, welcome to the Zentangle Project Pack series. This lesson is part of Project Pack number 19 and our 2022 12 Days of Zentangle. This is day number 2. We have gotten ourselves all ready yesterday by preparing this really beautiful template with a watercolor wash. Many of you probably have done that and it's nice and dry, which is wonderful. And some of you maybe decided not to do the watercolor wash, and that is completely fine too. As I mentioned, we will be working with this beautiful template and all of the other Project Pack number 19 materials that we found in our Project Pack 19 envelopes. This Project Pack does come with a custom item, so it is a little bit different for those of you trying to follow along with your own materials, but we still encourage you to do so, and we have a little bit more about how you might do that in our introductory video. So please check that out before going any further. So all of these lessons in this project pack are cumulative, and we recommend following along with them in sequential order. This being day 2, you should be okay. So I'm pretty excited to get started. Whenever I begin my lessons, I like to get everybody sort of ready in a threefold process. And what I do first is gather all my materials I'm going to be using. And today we're going to be using this beautiful template. And I am going to be using a brown Micron 05 pen. And that's actually all I'm going to be using today. Once you have your materials ready and maybe spend a little bit of time organizing your space, maybe putting some things away or kind of neatening up things, then I invite you to get your bodies comfortable. Find a nice, comfortable space for you to work on your artwork and maybe adjust your sits bones, gently roll your shoulders back, open your heart. And then I invite you to get your mind and your body ready, and I think sometimes I like to do is gently close my eyes or perhaps find a focal point and give yourself just a moment to honor the first step in the Zentangle method, and that is gratitude and appreciation for the time, for the ability, for the space, for whatever it is in your world you are feeling grateful for in this very moment. Allow yourself a moment for a nice deep breath. Recognize the power of the breath. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes or bring your focus to, and we shall begin. In our first video, we talked a lot about Zentomology and different types of categories of tangles in which we call tangle genuses. And as we start to fill this piece with different types of tangles, we will go over sort of the characteristics or the definitions of those tangle families. Today, I'm going to be working with just organic tangles. And an organic tangle is a tangle that, or tangles that grow and morph and fill a space much like a plant might. Organic tangles are curvy and wild, and they grow in unexpected ways. Most, but not all, organic tangles are inspired by nature. Easily drawn without a string, organic tangles meander in limitless directions. So we have these fun and playful definitions, but none of them are rigid. So we encourage you to play along with us, but don't feel like any of this is an exact science, but rather an art form. So organic tangles. We're going to begin with a tangle we call poke root. It's an oldie but a goodie, one of my favorites. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this beautiful sort of tree tree-like structure, this sort of tree trunk structure, as a guide, as a suggestion, but I am not going to use it as a demand. So it's just going to be something that I'm going to play with, but in the end, I'm actually going to cover it all up. So I'm going to begin by sort of tracing over one of these lines, these original tree lines here, with my brown pen. And I'm going to go up a little bit and then I'm going to kind of create a parallel line there, or as my first poke root stem, okay? Poke root is a tangle that starts with a stem. And once I have a nice stem there, I've flared it a little bit at the end for just some character. I'm going to cap it off with a little upside down smiley face. And sometimes you can put a little weighting there in the corners. And then I'm going to draw an orb around that whole thing, almost so this stem is right in the center. And that's your basic poke root shape. I'm going to go to the other side and do one on the other side. And I think for fun, I'm going to kind of go back and forth as I kind of gracefully grow my poke root. Playing along with these like sort of textured parts of the tree root and a nice big orb. I'm kind of, if you can see proportionately, these poke root berries are pretty big right here. I want to work bigger. We're on a bigger piece of paper, so try not to make your berries too small. As usual, when we're working on a project pack, we encourage you to watch as long as you like before starting on your own piece. You can kind of process, think about it. Gonna go back over to this side. So I'm using these beautiful sort of tree branches that are and tree trunk textures as just suggestions of my strokes here. Remember to breathe. Take your time. And then once we're starting to get up a little further, just working within this sort of knotted area to begin with. Allowing the poke root to kind of nestle in spaces. Again, just using these little branches as suggestions, maybe using them for a little bit and then carrying on. And I'm playing with like if you can see the width of the branches, I'm allowing my strokes to be slightly inside, and that's the width of my stem that I've been playing with, but you'll maybe find something that works good for you. Your orbs don't have to be perfect around your poke root. Sometimes a little bit of character is okay. We often say the term that a string is a suggestion, not a demand. So again, we're using these beautiful strings in here as maybe suggestions for for things, but not necessarily what you have to be doing. Taking your time, looking at your space. Again, yours should look a little different than mine. That's okay. You might have watercolor all over the place. You might have left it without watercolor. That's fine. They're really all kind of, let's say, tangled up here. As you start to add the poke roots in there, it makes it a little more interesting than just the woven branches. Again, I'm playing with the width of the string lines to have my branches be kind of similar. Make sure you're expanding your thought of how big a poke root can be. We're working on a bigger piece of paper. I know a lot of times it's easy to go small, but let's try to sort of explore what it's like to draw a little bit larger. We have a fatter pen. This 05 is just so luscious on the over the watercolor. If you don't know where to go, trust that string line and kind of use that as your suggestion. But if you're feeling a little more confident, you want to explore beyond. Let's see, I'll put one right here. So I'm starting to fill this space pretty good. I don't want to go, don't go too far ahead of me. Let's see, starting to fill it pretty good. I might subtle little curves at the end can turn your branch going in different directions. Let's see, I could put something in here. All right, so we have a good amount of poke root in the center of this space. And I think now what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to just focus on continuing on the poke root. I think I put one more here. It's calling to me. I'm going to try to grow the poke root, and then I'm going to evolve it into another tangle up these lines right here. And I'm going to work till about this, this fourth arc here. So I'm going to go just up these beautiful, I guess these radiating lines, and I'm going to work about to this fourth arc. So that's my area I'm going to cover, but I encourage you to kind of watch me as I do one. And I'm going to rotate between putting in a little bit of poke leaf, which is another organic tangle, and I'm going to put in a little rixty. And I'm going to show you one way to do it, and then you can play around with how you want to incorporate those tangles into your work. So let's try here with a little bit of adding a little poke leaf, and I'll show you some options. So I'm going to use this beautiful string line as a guide. I'm kind of working my brown pen a little bit inside those lines. And let's just start with one. Add a little weighting there if you want. And poke leaf has this beautiful sort of upside down heart-shaped leaf. Continuing to nestle in those poke roots if you find a place. And then I'm going to keep going up here, but when I get to the next one, I'm going to play around with like a splitting of my stem, going from one side to another. So I now have two stems. Cap it off with that same sort of arc or little bridge. Put my leaf on there. Again, let's try to like expand our proportions and make sure that we're not making our leaves too small. You want them nice and big. So kind of look at how big this looks on my sheet. And I'm going to play around with this sort of splitting idea. Kind of playful. Capping it off. And then here is the fourth one. That's where I'm trying to kind of end up. So again, I'm using the stem that was the string, and I'm trying to go a little bit thinner than that. That's sort of the size I am using for the stem. All right. So on this next one here, I'm going to do some rixty. And again, using that same stem idea where I'm going a little bit thinner than the stem that's there. Rixty's a little bit different, but again works with a stem where the cap is more of a straight line. And then I kind of pull it down to make almost these little triangular shapes. And then you just aura that triangular shape. But rixty leaves you with sort of this idea that the stem is going through. So I'm going to play with that stem, but I'm going to split it for fun. Do it on this side. Aura. And I'm working on this spine, so I don't want it to go sprawling. I'm trying to, almost as if it's a lattice and it's trying to stay on this spine. So I'm trying to hold it together a little bit. When you're working with the rixty, you can either keep on continuing it on, or if you wanted to just cap it off with a little end to the stem, you can always do that too. Could do just one. Maybe we'll split it again here. So again, I'm using this string as a guide to sort of hold a path for me. My elegance of limits here, like where do I want this rixty to go? So I'm using this as my lattice. This plant's growing on that. If I go off, it might fall down, I think. Playing back and forth. And as you go along, you can kind of play around with where looping them around maybe. And any of these, you can add in different ones. So if you wanted to do something a little silly and all of a sudden put in a poke leaf here, it's almost like you had grafted this other plant on there. And I'm about to where I want to stop, and I'm going to leave it kind of open-ended for us to rework something else, not rework, but to add something else later. So we're going to be slowly filling this. So trust the process, trust, leaving space. We're going to have other things that come about. So don't worry about having to fill everything in right now. There's going to be plenty of room for more things to come along. So I'll just know that we're like filling in, setting the groundwork here. Putting a couple poke leaves in there. So I'm going to start this next spine over here. I think I'm going to do some more poke leaf, switching back and forth, maybe poke leaf, rixty, but I don't know, it might just get a little invasive and crazy, so we'll see what happens. Again, don't be afraid to make your leaves bigger than you normally do. Working on a bigger piece of paper, kind of stretching yourself out of your comfort. Maybe many of you have worked bigger before, but it takes a minute to process the proportions. Reminding yourself to breathe, loosen up the grip on your pen. Notice how sometimes I go in and I put a little weighting there. I feel like that adds a nice little touch to how the stem goes into the leaf, shall we say, or the berry or whatever it is. Yeah, maybe we add just a poke root here. Why not, right? So these organic tangles are kind of begin to set the structure here. And as you notice, we have this lattice work here, but it really isn't, it isn't there for us to just like put a tangle in each little space. We're using this as this beautiful suggestion of how we can put these tangles down, but we're going to let them grow organically and let them attach themselves to other tangles. We're going to create composition. We're going to play around with how tangles can repeat themselves within one piece. And in the end, we're going to let these string lines fade away and sort of be forgotten, but they really were what gave us the intention to begin with. So that's the intention here, but everybody can look at it in different ways. There's no particular way to do it, but we're going to guide you along in this process, like kind of with that idea of owning your own composition, making artistic decisions along the way, using components of already drawn items as inspiration. Okay, all right, looks like I almost went even a little bit over, but that's okay. But like I said, we're trying to reach this fourth arc here, and I need to allow space for Martha tomorrow. So there's more to come. So I'm going to go back to my rixty over here, which sort of occupies the space a little bit differently. I'm going to put one in right here just to almost show where it's coming from, where its roots have been laid down. If you've never drawn either of these tangles, feel free to fool around with them first. When you're working on a really large piece like this, it's so important to just trust the process, not get caught up in one little component. If there's something that you went in a way that you weren't, particularly jazzed about, I encourage my students to just kind of leave it for a little bit. Don't get so caught up in trying to change it or fix it immediately, but instead maybe think about doing something else for a moment and then revisiting it, and then maybe some idea will come about. Taking your time, just focusing on that one stroke at hand. These organic tangles are fun because they really just kind of like can go all over the place and grow and turn. And what we're doing here is we're playing with these stem widths all being the same, so that the kind of the end of it, or the poke root or leaf or rixty, can change and fit onto any of these stems. So as you're going, you want to focus in on the stems being like, kind of the same. They don't have to be exact. Getting close to the end here, so I want to pay attention to how I'm going to kind of stop. And I think I'll leave that just like that. Can add in ones too. This looked like it needed a leaf in here for some reason. And like I said, remember, we're on the first day of tangling here, so you may just be patient and wait and see what's in store before you fill too much. And then start to play around with different things. All right, so I'm going to move my paper a little bit because I'm going to work on this one right here. And again, I'm going to work to about this fourth arc here area. So I think I'm going to go back to my poke leaf. And I'm sort of playing around with leaving a little space in between to like have these cool like sort of stems that have a little bit of presence, not necessarily putting a poke leaf everywhere. So I'm kind of playing around with that idea. If you would rather stay within your watercolored area, that's fine. I'm kind of playing with going off of it on this edge here. All right, so I have a couple done here. I'm gonna flip back to this center one. I'm gonna play with a little rixty and poke leaf. Honestly, like play around with moving with incorporating both of them in. A little bit of rixty, a little poke leaf, maybe bringing back a little more the poke root. Maybe there's another one you want to try. I think what we want to stick to in this first area is anything that has like this stem, because we do have some more. We have another day of organic tangles tomorrow, so you're going to want to see what we have in store. So that's the funny thing about working on a piece like this, is that you just have to kind of be patient. See what's happening each day. I'm going to cap off both of these and then have some go straight up here. Beautiful little triangular pieces. Again, let's not try to make them too small because this is a big piece. You want to have some room to kind of have some presence here. So Just keep checking back in with yourself to see what your proportion is. And if they end up smaller, then that's going to be cool too. You'll just have to draw a lot more of them. Again, embrace them being kind of wonky or funky. I a lot of times put a little bit of funk into my strokes just for character. See how I'm curling these stems around to sort of stay with my original branch that, or whatever you want to call it, that I'm attaching myself to. I might cut this one off in the middle a little early because, not too much, but give a little bit. This is shorter right here, so I'm going to try to give the next person a little bit extra room. I'm going to leave some of these stems just so that whoever comes next can play around with growing something off them. So I didn't finish this one, or this one she can play around with a new one. I didn't finish these. It's up to you, but it's going to give us a little more options when we get to the next space. All right, so I'm going to keep going back and forth, adding my poke leaf and rixty. And again, you can do it similar to how I'm doing it, or you can do all rixty or all poke leaf, or mix them all together. You can draw rixty and poke leaf and poke root in a more kind of bushy way, or you can do it in this sort of linear way. Kind of one of those really resilient tangles. They can go all over the place. Curling these around. It's kind of fun when you start to play around with, like, when they start to veer off, and then you can create these little fun looping lines to get them to go back to where you were working. If you find your pen getting a little gummed up with the watercolor because you had too heavy watercolor pencil, just scribble with it on another piece of paper for a second, just to kind of get it, the paint off it or whatever it is. It should be fine. Like I said, I'm going to leave my rixty like that, like here, because Martha's going to come in tomorrow and play around with some things. So I'm going to leave all these for some other adventure, shall we say. Poke leaf with these fun little upside down heart-shaped leaves. You'll get a feel for these little stems, kind of whatever your stem width is. It might be a little different than mine, and that's okay. Trying to keep those leaves a little bit bigger. You need to turn your tile a little bit as you work. Again, it's a little bit different when you're working on such a large piece of paper, but I have faith in you guys. All right, 2 more. I'm going to do some rixty again. Rixty's kind of like, doesn't really resemble any plant I can think of, but then it has a very plant-like feel to it, which I love. It's like an invented tangled plant. Love it. Play around with these stems. They might get knotted up in one another. Or maybe you give them room. You can kind of switch back and forth, play around with having it be really intricate, or maybe have more spaces in between. The idea is to try to hold on to these little spines because we're going to use these plants as our structure to hold in all our other tangles that we start to add over the next couple days. And as I said, I really want you guys to trust the process. So we're in a very unfinished phase right now, but you got to hold on to it as we go along. Some people might choose to not share their work until the very end. Others might be interested in sharing things as they go along. I don't think either way is wrong or right. I even find myself gradually getting smaller, so I do like a check-in to be like, okay, can I... And that might add a nice detail to it too, but maybe check out where you are with your proportion. We're having a little fun here in HQ because we're all working on our own piece, so we're kind of excited to see what each new teacher has in store every day, playing around with some stuff. So I'm going to leave that there because I'm not sure what's going to happen next. And then here we go, one more spine here to play around with. Again, using the width of the spine or the stem that's already there, but I've been going a little bit thinner than that, just sort of like putting my lines on the inside of those string lines. That's my gauge I've been starting with, but you might test out something a little different, but more or less you can use those string lines to guide you. Almost there. I think I'll do a little single at the end here. Okay. That's pretty fun. I was gradually adding in a little bit here and there, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait because I'm a little eager to see what Martha's got up for us tomorrow, and I can always add more stuff in there later. So even the waiting, I'm eager to put that in, but I think I'm just going to wait to do all that stuff. All right, so you've all seen what I've done with this part of day one. Day two, actually. and now let's see what Martha's done. She has taken a slightly different approach, following along with my lesson. And what do you think, guys? This looks pretty awesome.
Great, right?
I love the trunk almost following through with the tree aspect of it.
Very inky.
And the very large rixty, nice contrast on that.
Ooh, this is Julie's, so you get to see what Julie's backdrop looked like, which is beautiful. I love the pale tones and great work with proportion. I love her like kind of big and small poke roots, the same with the leaves.
Very beautiful.
Just a reminder that they've all stopped in that location, and we want you all to stop there too. Ooh, this is Ricky's. Nice work. I love the little fold over with the poke leaves. That's neat.
And a little, what is that, sprinkle at the top in the middle there, just sort of sneaks in.
Yes.
There's a lot of like
can't help it.
cross-pollination here on these various genuses. Yeah.
Yep. Oh, and there's Mom's.
I had some fun here, adding a few different little things, just feeling the growth. I mean, you just feel it growing.
Yes.
You can't help it.
And
Can't
looks
wait.
like one dropped off at the bottom there.
I know.
Yeah, I think it was overly ripe.
Don't go too far, though, because we've got stuff for you tomorrow. Have fun.
And so we look forward to seeing what you do, and see you tomorrow.
See you later.
Bye now.
Bye.